right, it's Ray the CPA. Let's talk about not-for-profits. Let's talk about what form do you have to file if you're a not-for-profit. So if you're a for-profit entity, you probably want to file an IRS Form 1120, or you want to file an IRS Form 1065. For non-for-profits, you want to file a Form 990. Now, officially, the name of that form is the Return of Organization Exempt from Income Tax. So the Return of Organization Exempt from Income Tax. That could be worded a little bit different, but the form itself is 69 years old. It first came about in 1941. It originally was only 2 pages. Now it's a lot longer. All right. So again, unlike Form 1120s or 1065s, because you're exempt from income tax, this form is pretty long. It's an informational return. We'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. There are 3 iterations of the form. So there's the standard 990. There is the 990EZ. So just like your 1040EZ, if you have a more simple organization, or it's a simpler form, and the reason it's simpler is your exempt organization only earns, I shouldn't say only, but earns between $200,000 and $500,000. Then you can file the 990EZ. Now, if your organization, your charitable organization, or your exempt organization, if you look at the intro to nonprofits, you'll see there are many different types of not-for-profit entities. So check that out. There'll be a card here for it. But if you check that video out, it'll help you to kind of see, all right, where do I fit in? Just a little taster. So like your local Chamber of Commerce is a not-for-profit, or your school sports board, that's a not-for-profit, or it's an exempt from income tax. Anyway, so if you make under $50,000, you have to file a 990N. Now the N is for notice. It's basically a postcard return. Now there has been a change in 2020 where you have to file your forms electronically. So that's why typically I would do a 990N if you were eligible for one. I could file that for you for free, really, but there's a cost to e-file it for you, so I no longer do those for free. So, all right, let's keep going. All right, I've got my handy dandy notes here. I want to make sure I hit everything. Okay, so everything after July, anything with a fiscal year end after July 2019 or a fiscal year beginning after July of 2019 have to be filed electronically from now on. Okay, so, and again, I believe it's 4.5 months after the end of your fiscal year is when it's due. So if you have a fiscal year in December of 2019, May of 2020 is when you would have had to do it. But now, because of our current situation right now, when you look at this video, look at the date. So 2 years from now, when you look at this date, you'll know what I'm talking about. But because of our current situation, we have an extension until July, right? So in theory, if you ended in December, your 990 has to be filed by July. So it's starting to get aggressive. So you need to be on your 990. Now you can file further extensions of up to 6 months. So in theory, you can make it so that you have 11 months total from your fiscal year end date. So if you had a fiscal year ending in 12 of 2019, with all of your extensions properly filed, timely filed, you wouldn't have to really get it filed electronically until November, okay? Now, fiscal years, let's just go into that really quickly as a reminder if you don't know. Calendar years always end in December. Fiscal years, for a multitude of reasons, I won't get into that, end at different times. So a lot of colleges and schools have a fiscal year end in June, right? Because the kids went home or their, summers are off. So that means your company's year is June to June. So it's slightly different from the calendar. So that's why the phraseology for when these 990s are due is based on your fiscal year end, not necessarily the year end, okay? So a year end, a calendar year end, December, your fiscal year end, whenever your organization's fiscal year end is, okay? Again, if you have questions about that, you can ask me. All right. Now, there are penalties related to the 990 not filing them timely. Why? Who cares? This is a public information form. The IRS publishes this information. This information there are fee-based and there are free, is available online. If you wanted to look up a 990 for a not-for-profit or an organization exempt from income tax, you can do that. There are free websites. I want to stay away from trouble because I don't want it to look like I'm endorsing any of these sites, but there are several that you can find. Okay, if you go to Wikipedia has a pretty decent section about this, and they list some of those free areas. So I would go to Wikipedia if I were you, and then you can see some of the free places to get 990s. So the 990 has 16 schedules that are attached. So you have the 990 itself, which is information about your organization, right? And then you have supplemental schedules. So your 1040, for example, the face of it, or the first 2 pages, is going to have information about you. What's your name? Where do you live? What's your address? Or the same thing. But you get my drift. It's going to have information, but then you're going to have schedules. Schedule C, for example, if you have business income on your 1040, that's going to be there. So same thing here. There are currently 16 of these schedules. All right, A through R. I think that's 16. So, for example, Schedule A is a public charity status and support. So, public charity status means that you get 33% or more of your donations from the public, defined as the public on this form. So, you have to do that. Now, a lot of the tax-exempt organizations that I've audited in my tenure, they blow that out of the water, but it's still something that's important, right? And your funders want to see that. They want to learn more about you. So remember, if you are an organization exempt from income tax, there's a reason for that. It's because you accept donations, right? You are not running for a profit motive. That's why you're exempt. So you want to make sure that you are being transparent to your potential funders. That's why this form, the 990, is so important, because your funders are going to want to see your 990. And your 990, not a lot of times, but you need to have your financial statements in order to answer this form. Okay, and so for example, I'm not going to go through all the schedules, but I'll go through a couple. So a 501c3 charity, and you can look at my other videos to see what that is definitely going to need, most likely, a Schedule A. You're going to need a Schedule B. That's a schedule of your contributors. People that are giving to your charity, you've got to name them. And now it's mandatory that they have the address, right? Schedule C, political campaign and lobbying activities. Now that's going to be for a 501c4. So like the ACLU, or basically institutions that are lobbying or moving the needle politically, they're going to have that form. Schedule J is a good one. The compensation in your organization, you're going to have to disclose who's the most highly compensated person. What's your board getting paid? Things like that. Schedule N, liquidation, termination, dissolution of significant disposition of assets. So if your organization owned a big building or owned some equipment, depending on what you were doing, and you got rid of that thing, now significant, you'll need a person that prepares. So if I'm preparing your 990, you and I will go over, when I send you a questionnaire, you and I will go over what this means, because it may be significant to your organization, but not to another one, okay? So did I touch on everything? Let's talk about penalties. So this information, don't think of it like a census, but it's kind of like a census. A lot of organizations that deal in or do research about the philanthropy sector are going to be using this public information, your 990. So it's important that it's transparent, that it's accurate, that it's done well, that it's done right. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, again, I am a CPA, I'm not your CPA yet, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this yourself though, because there's a lot riding on this, and you don't want to bear the risk of omitting information, because there are stiff penalties for it. and you don't want to risk not having it done or blowing it off, because again, the 990 itself I think is 8 pages. Then the supplemental forms, 2 out of the 16 are 1 page, but the rest of them are 2, 4, 6, 8 pages long. So this is a serious form. It's going to take you a long time. It's going to take you time to gather all the information and make sure it's accurate. Then it's going to take you quite a while to fill it out, because if you're not used to it, it can trip you up. A lot of the questions they're not ambiguous, but they can be confusing if you're not used to them, and it's time consuming, it's cumbersome. So you want to be careful. You want to get a qualified preparer, somebody that can do it for you, or somebody that can at least guide you through it. A lot of accounting firms have tools, but depending on where you are, if you're a smaller organization or a medium organization, you may or may not want to spend that much money. I think the national average for preparation is $750. That's what they say. But what I've encountered is, a lot of places are paying between $1,700 and $3,800 is reasonable, depending on how complex what you have going on. So, all right, this has been Ray the CPA. Again, send me your questions, subscribe, interact. These videos, you make them better with your questions. So I really appreciate you. Stay safe and bang bang. Thank you. From previous engagements. Well, I'm not independent. Your audit better go